A plumber was hired to perform work on an insured's home. In the course of that work, the plumber accidentally smashed a wrench into that pipe, breaking it and spilling out some water. The water damaged nearby drywall and carpet. Yeah, so that's sort of where you get into, we call them the J5, J6 exclusions.
Yes.
Yeah. And those tend to deal with, let's get into the language of them
Yes, please.
here.
Love policy language.
J5, so J is damage to property, and we're excluding property damage to, ellipsis, and then there's 2 points, 5 and 6. So 5 is that particular part of real property on which you or any contractors or subcontractors working directly or indirectly on your behalf are performing operations if the property damage arises out of those operations. So the part that we're talking about today, there's lots to focus on there, but the part that we're talking about today is where it says excluding damage to that particular part on which you are performing operations. So what are you really working on? And then J6 is that particular part of any property that must be restored, repaired, or replaced because your work was incorrectly performed on it.
Can I throw out one observation before you continue?
Yeah.
But check this out. Look at 5. What kind of property?
Real property.
Right. Does it say that in 6?
Does not.
It says any property, yeah. So listeners out there, if you're a CGL handler, keep that in mind. One says real property, the other says any property. So, thank you. My job here is done.
Absolutely.
All right.
So the interesting thing that you get into with these is, if you think about, let's say you have like a plumber or somebody, they're swinging a big wrench around and they smash into a pipe.
Oh my goodness!
The water comes out of the pipe and damages some stuff. There's the cost to fix the pipe itself, right? Got to take the broken pipe out, got to put a new pipe in, and then there's the cost to fix. Well, what did that water damage? So far we've been in the previous 2 examples, we've been talking about just the cost to fix that pipe, the cost to fix. What were they working on?
Well, I assume in your plumber scenario, he was there to not pound on the pipe, but it was there actually to work on the pipe, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, working on it, accidentally hit it, and we're talking about that particular damage. Right. Now we're getting into damage that something they weren't even working on, and I'll give you some examples to dig into there.
Right. But here, before we move on, though, you got. So I'm saying, Brennan, no on the pipe because that was your work that you're performing operations on, and it's real property, so I can use J5 there too.
There you go.
But the water that then leaks all over other stuff. So I wasn't there to work on the drywall, or you're fine. Let's go back to our old bathroom case we had years ago with the carpeted toilet covers and all that stuff. So the water damages all that toilet coverings, the carpet, the lovely carpet, and it's all damaged. I had my AstroTurf in the shower. That was all ruined and damaged. So that to me would be like, that wasn't their work. So I could see there could be coverage for that, Brendan. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the you're damaging work that's not the insured work product.
Resultant damage from my work product. Yes, so that should be covered, I think.
Yeah, because that's sort of, and we think about the purpose behind the insurance.
Right.
We don't really want to defend folks against their own carelessness.
Right.
But when it sort of spins out of control, when it's sort of, this went way far beyond what I might have expected.
Damage, that's exactly what your general liability policy is supposed to provide coverage for. And then that's where you can tell you're insured. That's what you're paying premiums for. Mr. or Ms. Insured is for this resultant damage that occurred now, right?
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to quote the test or anything.
You were quoting.
I was just kind of given, we're thinking about what is the purpose behind this, but the actual... if we dig into these cases, let's say you've got a manufacturer of steel beams, and they're sued when their defective beams failed to hold up a massive screen at like an airport, and the falling screen cracked the concrete below. We're gonna save product completed operations for another time.
Can't wait, Brennan. That'd be exciting.
But what do you
let's say they were still working on the whole thing. Yes, so they still had another place to build. So they're still performing operations. Certainly the beam would not be. That's their work. I think the screen that collapsed and then the broken concrete, that could be. This wasn't Denver, perchance, was it?
This was. I'll tell you what state it was in. Michigan law. So it's Michigan.
Michigan, huh? Oh, our arch rivals here in OHIO. I'm thinking, no on the beam and yes on the screen and the damaged concrete. Yeah.
This is a case, actually. So part of what we're looking at here today is just a resource sheet on plrb.org. These are great resources for anybody looking for summary of a topic like this. So we have a resource sheet on faulty workmanship. And this was one of the examples under defective workmanship, just going to show that defective workmanship that damages others' property or damages work that's not the insured's work product, that can be an occurrence under the policy.
Very good.
And that's where this court went with that, exactly. Another example along these lines, let's say you have a building that collapses during the restoration of like a historical property.
Oh, my goodness.
And then you're thinking about the damage to the personal property. Is the damage to the personal property, is that an occurrence?
I would say yes, but check this one out, Brennan. Well,
sure.
You have to look too, because there is another exclusion that we're not talking about. We're talking about J5 and 6, but J4 is damage to personal property, but it's got to be in your care, custody, and control. So let's not say any of that personal property was in their care, custody, and control. And let's say that, yes, this was damaged. I would say yes, but it would be J6 exclusion that would apply because it wasn't real property. Huh? Yeah. Come on, brother.
Yeah. I love what you're doing to these scenarios, Mike, because this is a really thorny area. It's really cool. We had a great a session that's becoming a CE course, and there's so much to dive into these scenarios because there's so much detail when you get into. We're gonna have to split this up into 2 podcasts, and I didn't even have J4 on the roadmap, but that is great.
Look at that.
Bonus, that is a whole other thing
for our listeners out there. They're always looking for that stuff. Yes, it's always exciting.
So let's keep it going.
Okay.
Let's get into a let's say you've got a farmer that's who hired a company to reduce the temperature of the grain inside a grain bin.
Oh, geez.
Because a hot grain bin, if you have the grain heating up to such a degree, it's at risk for exploding.
Oh.
And while they were working on it, it did explode.
Jesus.
So a lot of injuries. Did not end up well.
I'm laughing, and I shouldn't be laughing. Right? That's horrible. Yes.
I gotta leave with that.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry.
But so what do you think? Were they working? If someone's in there trying to reduce the temperature of the grain, are they working on the grain itself or the grain bin that exploded?
Wow.
Yeah, where do you draw that line?
Or either or. Yeah, geez, this is tough.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is really a brain tease. You should do the old Jeopardy theme song here or something. So I don't know, Brent. Put me to task. I got to come up with a decision. I'm going to say it was the grain that they were working on, not the grain bin. So I would cover the bin, but not the grain. I don't know. How's that?
This is a coin flip because there's some courts that interpret it broadly and some courts that interpret it narrowly.
Right.
This was a broad interpretation. They said the exclusions are still applicable because they did not apply to only the precise area of the property being worked on.
Okay, so it's not the grain. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Somebody agreed with me, brother? That's what you're saying? Some court out there was right and agreed with me?
Well, see if we can track this, because it gets really, really tricky here. So when you see the broad interpretation, that means the exclusion applies, which means that there's no coverage.
Correct.
So it's kind of this tricky thing where, hey, we're looking at it broadly, and that winds up meaning that there's no coverage because you're looking at an exclusion.
Right. So we're looking at the definition of property we're performing operations on, I guess, broadly, by saying it was both the bin and the grain.
Yeah. Let's contrast that with a construction company that was hired to build a home.
Right.
There was some kind of shipping delay and the roof could not be installed before the rainy season, so they covered it with tarps. The tarps failed and water damaged the interior. And so now the question is, what were they working on? Were they working on the roof? Were they working on the house? What exactly was that particular part?
I would have to go with the roof, even though I could certainly see, the whole thing was, if they built the whole darn thing, it could all be their stuff. But let's go. I think you already led me, because I'm not that bright, to that this is going to be a narrow court case, so we're going to say it was just the roof.
Yeah. So when you're interpreting an exclusion narrowly, that it's going to mean that there was coverage, and that's what they found here. The defective part was the roof. They're working on the roof. So it's just going to kind of break down as, does your particular state that you're dealing with, does it have a broad interpretation of J5, J6, or does it have a narrow one? And that's really going to impact this conversation of what is that particular part? How narrow, when you start talking about what people are working on, how narrow do you consider that?
Could I throw one out there that was fun that I learned? And I think I read it in some. Believe it or not, Brent, I used to read. And there was one, I think it was like back in the day, they used to have something called a switchboard. You know what that is? Used to route telephone calls and whatnot through it. And this contractor was working on one of the, and this was a huge board of all these little circuits and whatnot that all kind of coalesced to make it into one kind of thing to help the phone system operate. But there was one little part of this here switchboard that was damaged, that then caused damage to the whole thing. So the question became what is that particular part? So is it only the little section that I'm physically working on, or is it the whole darn thing that I was hired to work on the switchboard? And I think there's courts that have come down, again, narrow broadly. Most are going to say, well, you were hired to work on the switchboard, so that's your particular part. And some are saying, no way, it was just that little piece that you're working on, not the whole thing. So you only have no coverage for the little piece, got broader coverage for the whole big thing. Could go both ways. It's fascinating, Brent, but that's it. What is that particular part? Fascinating to me. Fascinating.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, because there's so much you can talk about here, you can't really rely on a clear rule. You got to look at what your state is saying about it.
Investigate it, go to Peelabry. You want one more just for funsies? And I think we may have a whole episode maybe on this way back when.
Let's do it.
All right. We got the quick lube oil change place. Bring my vehicle in, change that oil, sir. They do, or madam. And then they don't put in the old drain plug tight enough. And all of a sudden, all your oil leaks out. And then you drive down the road 10 minutes, and your engine seizes. And you're like, oil change place, all the oil leaked out, my engine seized. So same thing. What was your work? What was that particular part you're working on? So what was your work in that one, Brennan? It was the oil change, right? Some court's going to say, well, the only thing that would be excluded would be the filter and the oil. And some would say, you were working on the whole engine when you're changing oil. So it could go both ways. But I think the majority would be that, hey, it was just the oil and the oil filter. That's what you were called to work on, not the whole darn engine. You weren't in there messing with the manifold and fuel injection and pistons and all that other stuff. So that would all be resultant damage. But again, course could side both ways. It's fascinating, Brennan, and you hit it on the head. Where do you go? You can always reach out to your friends at PLRB on the legal side. They'd be more than happy to investigate that and say, hey, we found this case law in your state that says this or says that. Fascinating.
And we'll after these takeaways, we'll point you to the adjuster resource sheet on this topic.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right, let's head into them.
Yay.
Defective workmanship that damages others' property or damages work that is not the insured's work product can be an occurrence. The J5 and J6 exclusions challenge courts to examine whether the damage occurred to that particular part the insured was working on. Well, check out the show notes for key points from this episode and links to learn more at plrb.org. Subscribe and rate us, and we'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.